Internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion, this time on Leigh Bardugo's Siege and Storm. So this is the second book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, still following Alina and her adventures and battle against the Darkling. So for this book, I want to talk a little bit about the character of Alina and how I personally feel about her, and then how I feel about her relationships. So first, Alina the Pessimistic. Now, one thing that I find really annoying about Alina and her character is the fact that she's always complaining. You see a lot of it in the first book and in this book in particular, where she has a dire view on everything, no matter what's happening. And while I can understand, hey, we're in the middle of war, hey, this is pretty difficult, hey, I'm being chased and attacked, every second she is so busy worrying about what to worry about that she's not actually doing what she could do. While I'm busy reading all of the things that she could do so that she could up herself, so that she could kick butt, so that she could win, she's busy complaining about how life sucks and she wants to die, or how life sucks and she wishes it wasn't like this, or how life sucks and this sucks, and just everything is a whole bunch of suckage. So I just didn't like that about her character. I was tired of listening to her just complain. I am not quite sure how to put this into words. It wasn't necessarily complaining. She was so focused on her emotions and how she felt about everything that a lot of the times she let that completely distract her from all the possibilities of what she could do. She was so focused on the fact that there was horrible things happening that she didn't focus on how to fix those horrible things or stop those horrible things from happening. And I understand that that was part of her character and part of her nature, and while I personally did find it annoying and found that part of her character annoying, I did appreciate it at the same time. And it really taught me that it doesn't matter whether or not I personally identify with the character or I personally would make the choices of the character, but that this character is, in this sense, a person. It is within their right to feel differently than what I would, or to act differently than I would, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're in the wrong. Would I do it that way? Probably not, but hey, I can't fault them for thinking that way or doing it that way. And so while I did find Alina's pessimistic ideals and nature rather annoying to read at times, I also appreciated them because it was not only necessary to the book and did add a lot of character to the book, it also taught me that it is okay for characters to not be Chinoa. I know, amazing. It has taken me so long in all of my years to learn this. Thank you, Bardugo. And then the second thing I want to talk about is her relationships. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this book, I'm not really going to spoil it. I'm just going to say the obvious triangle situation going on here. It's kind of like a square idea, maybe a star. I'm not quite sure. It's some sort of romantic shape going on. And one of the relationships, which is the most obvious one, is the one you're introduced to in the first book. One of the ones you're introduced into the first book. Let's say the first one you're introduced to in the first book. And that is the relationship between Alina and Mal. And whatever you feel about the relationships or who you ship in this, I mean, come on, these two have been going at it, talking about their feelings, and I don't think Alina can love anyone else other than Mal. The problem for me isn't who she chose to love, but how their love is portrayed. And Bardugo is very aware of how their love is portrayed. Some of the things that the characters say to them just show this, so there is a reason for why these characters act the way they do. But I just got so irritated. The whole relationship between Mal and Alina is filled with jealousy, with distrust. Mal doesn't trust Alina, Alina doesn't trust Mal, and while you see Alina feels bad for it, and you see Mal kind of does as well, it's still really frustrating to watch. It's like, what do you expect them to be when you're looking at Alina and you're like, why do you expect this of him? That is crazy to expect of them. And when you look at Mal, oh, you're like, why don't you just accept her for who she is now instead of looking for who she was? Just love her for who she is if you truly do love her. And it's so frustrating to see the relationship between the two of them because it's such an immature relationship. These two people are not tried and tested. Yes, they've been through war. Yes, they've been through a lot, but they are still children playing at war and not sophisticated in the whole idea, and it's really shows in the way that they think of their relationship, the way they think of each other, and the way that they interact. And oh my gosh, I just wanted to throttle them at times and just say, will you shut up, sit down, and talk to each other or something? One of the main reasons that it's like this is that it's really hard to have a relationship during the war. I mean, come on, it's not easy. You're all fighting some big enemy. It's hard because people are dying left and right. You have to make tough choices. You're seeing death, you're seeing destruction, you're seeing your homes be torn down, and it's very hard to have a relationship. And unfortunately, Alina and Mal are just not at the point where they can fully have a committed relationship where they are not just hating at each other, tearing down each other, or being jealous of each other during this time of war. It's not a healthy relationship they have, and that was one of the biggest things that I had with this particular book, was the growth that we see in the characters and how they are, but also the growth in Elena's relationships with all the males that are around, that all of them seem to be attracted to only her, all for different reasons, of course, so it makes it a little more believable that she attracts the attention of all of these guys. But this idea that there are certain times when you can have a relationship and certain times where you can't, and understanding the maturity of it. So for this, I would hope that everyone took away that Mal and Elena's relationship during this time isn't the best, and maybe that's why people have different ships for this particular series. I don't mind the Elena and Mal ship. I kind of was like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen. It's like if you've ever watched a Korean drama, you know which guy's gonna win it in the end. You see the same thing in books. You know which character you're going to be focused on more. And this is heavily geared towards that, where you're just like, ooh, it could be the other guy. You're gonna play a trick on me. But then at the same time, you're like, but you're focusing so much on this one relationship. Are you sure? And then they do something to the main relationship, and then you're like, you're gonna do the other thing. But then they pull back to that main relationship, that first introduced relationship, and you're like, man, you tried to trick me. So it's a whirlwind of a romantic shape of some sort, and I just don't think that the first introduced couple is really mature enough for, or capable enough to have a relationship during the war. It's just not healthy, in my personal opinion. It just doesn't seem like a healthy relationship. So I really did like this book. I thought it was great. I did like how, like what I've said before in my previous video, how the first book in a trilogy is the introduction and the second one kind of grows the world. And this definitely does that. It teaches you a lot more about the history of all the characters, building these characters and building on the ones you know, and then building on the new ones that they have. And it really does explore more into that gray idea of setting up Elena and the Darkling as opposites, but also as like a similar entity. And I thought that was a very interesting concept, to see light and dark as neither existing without the other. So it's just a really fascinating read to me. Like, some of the concepts that I see in it, I'm just like, wow, those are things I've thought about so much, but to see them portrayed in this dark fantasy just makes it all the better. I would pick this up and I would definitely read it again. While some of the characters really do get on my nerves, I think that just proves Bardugo is such a great writer, because she wrote characters that, while I personally did not like, at times I still felt for them and still wanted to read more about them. I didn't find them so very annoying that I'm like, oh no, your story's worthless, or oh no, I wouldn't never continue. They were annoying to me personally, but at the same time written so well that I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can live with that. That does make a lot of sense, Bardugo. Yeah, I get that. So that is it for this video. If you like what I'm doing here and you want to continue to see more, click the subscribe button down below and ring the little bell to be notified every time I put out a new video. Comment down below if you thought anything I said here was important, relevant, or completely out of bounds and wrong. My social media links are in the box. I do have a blog where I also post more frequently about the books that I talk about here. So if you want a more straightforward, precise recount of any of the books and any of the things I talked about here, go check it out over there, and I update that more frequently because I have more time to do so. That is it. So goodbye, internet.